Welcome to the Debt Investor. Today we're going to talk about one thing and one thing only, and that is the main risk driver when you're investing in notes. And so all that means in layman's terms is how do we protect our money and what's the one number that we have to make sure we get right. Now, of course, there are others, but this is the main one. That's why it says main right there. So with that being said, let's jump right into it. This is one simple acronym, and it's LTV. And for those of you who know, you know, but if you don't, it stands for loan to value. Okay. And so what is loan to value? What does it mean? How do I calculate it? Blah, blah, blah. So what it is, well, it's the loan to the value of the property. So think about it like this. If you have a $60,000 loan on a $100,000 property, easy math, that is a 60% LTV, right? Now, what does this number mean? Why do I care about it? And what does it do for me? Well, it protects your money, right? This 60%, and we'll get into it later, but the 60% is safe. Banks like to stay below 80% as LTV, and that's where you hear that I need 20% down. Now, there's FHA, VA, USDA programs that help you get 0, 3.5, or 5% down, whatever. But banks, if you go to get a conventional loan, they are 80% or less, right? And so whether it be 20%, 60%, 80%, but we don't want to go above 80. Really, we don't want to go above 75 if it's up to us. We want our LTV to be as low as possible. And the reason for that is we'll just draw it out. If we have a $100,000 property, house, piece of land, does not matter what it is. And let's do a few examples right here. So we have 1, 2, and then we have 3. In one of them, we have a 90% LTV. So the borrower has $10,000 worth of equity, and they're using $90,000 of our dollars to purchase this property. In the second example, we're going to have 75. And then in the last example, we're going to have a 30% LTV, okay? And so these are 3 situations, and all 3 of these occur all the time, just so we're aware. But the safest one here is the 30%, and let's explain why. So if this house were to go down in value or something were to happen to the borrower, we have costs. And so what do those costs look like? Well, we're going to have legal, because we're going to have to go through this process called foreclosure, and that's just us legally getting possession of the property back. And so that can be 7 to 8%, okay? We're going to have lost returns, right? So what does that mean? Well, if we were getting 1% of our money and we missed out for 6 months, and it's probably going to be longer than that, we just lost 6%, if not more, throughout this process. So now we've just lost 15% of our money. And so that's why our LTV or banks have to be 80% or less, because right now we're at 95. And if we go above 100, it's our money at risk, not the borrower's. And so when we look at these, right, if we add that 15% to the 90, what are we now? We're in the red. All this up top is money we've lost. But with the 75, if we add the 15, now we're at 90. Our money's still safe. It's just we only have a 10% margin of error, not preferred. And then with the 30%, it brings us up to a whopping 45% LTV after our costs. And these are just example numbers. And so what does that mean? There is still, in this example, $55,000 of borrower equity to be lost first. And so lower LTV helps protect your money, but it also helps do one other thing, and it's protect against defaults, right? Think about it. If you have that same $100,000 house, okay, so we have the $100,000 property, and we have 2 examples. One of them has $5,000 in equity, just to be extreme, and the other one has $50,000 of equity. Which person is more likely to make their payment? Probably the guy with $50,000 of equity. Why? Because if he doesn't make his payment, his $50,000 is fair game. The $5,000 guy, he doesn't care, right? If he needs a $10,000 roof put on, he's better off just giving the house back and going to buy another one that has a good roof. And so you just got to be careful with your LTV, because it will impact your default rate. If your LTV is too high, when anything bad happens, borrowers just give it back or make you go through the process, and you don't want to have to be doing that. But as long as you stay below a 75 or 70% LTV, you're good. Banks are below 80, but you have to think banks have to do enough volume to stay in business. You might only have to do one deal every 3 years or 2 deals a year, whatever it may be. Banks have to do 30, 40, 50, 100 a month just to keep the lights on, whereas you don't. And so you get the opportunity to be way more selective than a bank does, which is really a gift, not a curse. And so make sure the loans that you do choose to write or invest in are very, very safe, right? Because we don't have to just jump at everything. We can really cherry pick, whereas a bank, really they all have the same underwriting standards, but private note investors, we get to look at a bunch of them and say, I want that one or I want that one. We don't have to take all of them. Really don't have to take any, but whatever. So your LTV, at the end of the day, its job is to protect your money. Oops. And that's literally all it does. And now you might be asking, well, there's other risk drivers. Like what about the borrower's credit or the payment history or the DSCR, which if you don't know what that is, don't worry, or the collateral itself. Well, if you underwrite your LTV correctly, the rest of it, while it does matter, it doesn't really matter. Because think about it. If you had somebody come to you and they said, hey, I have a $300,000 house, it's paid off, and I need 50 grand. Okay, and I'll pay you whatever your rate you want is. First position, like you are going to be the only loan on this property. Do you care about their job or their income history or their payment history or anything? No. Why? Because you know that if they default on this $50,000, you get to go after that $300,000 house. The only time you get worried about the all that other stuff is because the LTV is not there. And that's banks, like when they look at, sure they still have to underwrite because they still have underwriting departments. But if you go in there and you're like, I got this house worth $100,000, I need 20 grand. They don't do loan amounts that small, but if they did, they'll throw money at you, right? $1 million property, I need 200,000 bucks. Take it. We don't need it. Like we still need this stuff, but you're getting approved as long as you have a pulse. And so it's just really different. And the main driver of that is LTV, right? Because what's going to happen is on that $1 million property, okay, there is $200,000 worth of loan, so that's down here, but there's $800,000 of equity. And so even if the property gets down to being worth 500 grand, that's 500,000 that the borrower lost. The bank's 200,000 still protected. Like the property would have to go down by 80% for the bank to lose money. And so the lower the LTV, the safer the loan. Like 100% concrete rule, but it's really your main driver. Debt to income, DSCR, all that other stuff, collateral. Collateral's not really a worry as long as the LTV is there. Now, the one risk that you do have with that is, I don't know how to spell that right. With your collateral, is if it's appraised wrong or guesstimated the value wrong, whatever. So if you go and write a 70% LTV loan on a $100,000 property, right? Well, here's the issue, right? What if it's not a $100,000 property? What if it's actually somebody that got too excited and maybe they didn't do it intentionally, but what if they lied to you, right? What if it's a $75,000 property? Well, we went from being safe at a 70% LTV to being in a very bad situation because now they only have $5,000 worth of equity, and that's like a 93 or 94% LTV. Like, so pay attention. It literally costs, you can go get these things called a BPO, and that stands for broker price opinion. Okay, and it's from real estate agents. And if you don't trust a real estate agent, get an appraiser out there. It might cost you $400 or $500, but you know it's safe, right? And you could go get multiple BPOs. They're literally like $100. And you in some market, not 100,000. Whoops. And in some markets, you can probably get them cheaper than that. It might be a little more expensive. But if you really want to make sure your money's protected, and I'm assuming you do, go get a BPO. Like, worst that happens, you lose $200 or $300 getting 2 or 3 different opinions. And if they come back and say, hey, I think it's worth $95,000. Hey, I think it's worth $100,000. And hey, I think it's worth $110,000. That doesn't mean don't do the deal because, oh, we can't determine a value, right? Because we got almost a 20% variation there. What it means is on the lowest number you got, maybe subtract 10% just for giggles, So now we're at call it 85,000, and on that 85,000, I'll go at 75% LTV. That puts me at a $63,750 loan, right? And I think everybody watching this could agree that if we lent $63,000 on a property that came back with 3 opinions at $95,000, $100,000, and $110,000, our money's relatively safe, like considered safe. Obviously, it's not risk-free. Everything has a risk, but that's a to me, in my formal opinion, that is a very safe place to put my money. Because worst comes to worst, we have $32,000 worth of equity. Best case, we have almost $50,000 worth of equity. So that's what LTV does. That's how I can protect your money, and that's why it's the variable that drives and determines your risk. Now, once again, there is all that other stuff, but the main one is LTV, right? Income doesn't matter if it's 20% LTV because we have 80% cushion. They stop paying. Here's the thing. If the LTV is low enough, our worst case is that they keep paying. Understand that. So if our LTV is 20% on call it a $500,000 property, so we have a $100,000 loan, okay? They stop paying us our $100,000 back. So maybe their payment was $1,000 a month, call it, whatever. They stop paying their $1,000 a month. Okay, we have to pay the legal fees. Now we're at 120, call it. That's high, but we're at 120. Okay, so we're in a $500,000 property for $120,000. Their worst, your worst case, if your LTV is low enough, is that they pay you, is that everything goes to plan. Because if they stop paying you, you get to take the property back. So that's what LTV is. That's how I can help you. And that is why it's your main driver of risk. So with that being said, I hope you enjoyed. If you want to learn more about this, in the description down below, check out our website. We do have a free course where you can go and learn hours and hours and hours of this stuff, as well as some other freebies for you. Go check out our other videos. Like it if you like it, dislike it if you disliked it. But I hope you learned something, and I'll see you in the next one.